with Ryan.
Today we are learning basketball with Riley Gisseman. He writes with Salt City Hoops, and one day with Switch Theory, a little tease, something in the works down the line. Here to talk a little Utah Jazz, the value of the 2-point shot, and the growing trend of floaters over the years in the NBA. Love the art of the floater. Can't wait to dive into all things floater and 2-point shots, and just look into the Jazz. What are the Jazz up to? I'm interested to see where this rebuild is going. It feels like something is going right in Utah these days, and they're building a little something, so it's exciting. But first, how you doing, Riley?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, I've enjoyed your account, your coverage and perspective of the Jazz for a long time. So and also analytics, and I thought we could kind of start with that, and maybe you could tell us a little bit of either a combination of your background of basketball and analytics getting into where you are today, but also just kind of your process, like how you try to involve analytics with the film when you're analyzing basketball, what kind of role analytics plays in all of that, and any tools you use or maybe have thought to try to develop to help you with your process.
Yeah, I mean, I think my story is like, honestly, I try to think, or I normally think that it's pretty unique, but I don't think it's very unique when it comes to like in the basketball world. So I started out 14, 15-year-old kid, desperately wanted to prove that Gordon Hayward was a better basketball player than Paul George. A couple of years before, Gordon Hayward was picked one pick before Paul George. Lots of people thought that it was a terrible pick. I loved the pick. I had watched Hayward in March Madness, was very excited about it. But every year it was like, oh man, Paul George is in the conference finals. Oh man, like, what is Gordon Hayward doing? He's a restricted free agent now. Like, why are they not extending him? But because of that, I spent so much time on, at first, Reddit and then later Twitter, just like constantly trying to figure out how to create new stats that could prove it, or put together stats that could prove this reality that I knew for a fact was true. um but so that was a lot of like my mid to late teens was doing that type of stuff. And I ended up doing so much of this past when Gordon Hayward left, through Donovan Mitchell, and obviously I've continued today. Um, so much of it on Twitter, and I got followed by my boss today. And so he sent me a DM during COVID. I had sent out a tweet that was like, "Hey, does anyone have like uh, COVID stats?" It was in like March of 2020. And he sent me a DM saying like, "Hey, what do you do for a living? Like, why why are you being a bank teller as opposed to working in data analytics just full time?" Um, and so I got to start. And he had followed me for basketball statistics for a while, and he was like, "Man, I can't believe that like it never occurred to me until now that like I should reach out and try to hire you." Um, but that was 6 years ago now, 5 years ago, going on six. Um, and I've been working at just a pest control company since. I still do basketball analysis all in my free time. That's almost the only thing that I do. I come home from my job where I'm doing data science, and I continue to do data science when I'm home. Uh, but it really opened a door in a way that I don't think many people have that opportunity when they are like fairly young. Like I think I was 20, 21 when I got my internship. I hadn't finished college. It slowed me down a lot in college. I just finished college this last year, got graduated. Um, but yeah, it's been such a like world builder for me, to have this intense interest in basketball and want to figure it out statistically. I think a lot of my stuff has evolved pretty quickly from like, how can I prove that this player is better than this player, to I really think that the majority of my analysis now is getting frustrated with the eye test versus the statistical, like the stats heads, right? And recently it's really been like the eye test guys are right. And I'm going to prove it to you through stats. I'm going to go through and I'm going to figure out why, quantitatively this guy is saying like that's a good shot on a mid-range shot, or is saying like you need to rest your players in the third quarter if they have 4 fouls. And it's like a lot of stats people would say no, like a minute is a minute, you play until you foul out, it's whatever. Or would say why would you ever take a mid-range shot, like that's just a bad shot. But I think there's just so much like depth to the human brain and what it can comprehend, especially in something like game theory, that isn't necessarily quantified by statistics that people throw around. And so that's kind of where I'm at today, is always trying to prove the mid-range shot is good, momentum exists, clutch baskets are more important than non-clutch baskets, yeah, etc. So
No, I dig it. There's a lot of kind of like what ifs and kind of big questions, like the hot hand factor and different statistical kind of questions that a lot of people kind of lean both ways on it. And momentum's one that I love there, because as a former like just high school athlete, like obviously you feel momentum in sports and it's there, like it's palpable. Like anyone who's ever played a sport knows momentum exists. But then like the statistician, the stat side will tell you that it's not real, or it's not as impactful or effective as you think. And then if you ask anyone in the actual game, like I've gone out of my way to ask like KCP after a big highlight play and Wendell Carter after a big highlight play this exact question, just like, do you feel the momentum out there? Not just like yourself, but can you kind of feel the team like get a little swing, get a little extra effort push from that? And they say absolutely, like they definitely believe in it. So that's one of those things where like I'll always side kind of with the players side of things there. And to your point, like I think anyone looking at this seriously realizes that they go hand in hand, and they're tools that kind of help explain different things. And if you're watching the film, you can't see everything. The stats can tell you a lot of the things that did happen, and then you can go back and see how they happened on the film, or why they happened, and in different ways. So they're all tools that go hand in hand, and it's exciting and interesting to kind of look into different questions. I was going to pull up some of your data viz as we're talking here for a couple of the questions you've tried to answer, like how much is a 2-pointer worth? And as you were talking, I thought of one similar goal I've always had in the stats world is to try to just really get a good grasp on defense. So like I've come up with like different variations of like combining hustle stats that I think are the most important or most valuable, like your deflections, and maybe you're like it's tough to find reliable percentages for like shot contests, but that in theory would be a valuable stat. Maybe you value charges and loose balls, maybe you don't as much, but stuff like that, put it in a little formula, throw it on a chart. And generally speaking, when you combine like block steals and deflections, you're going to find a lot of good defenders, active defenders that match the eye test with the stats. So if you can kind of find the right ratio and formula, you'll probably get pretty close. Like it also doesn't have to be perfect, I think, is what a lot of people lose sight of. Like it doesn't have to be the top 10 players in BPM have to be the top 10 players in the NBA. Like it doesn't have to be translated so simply. Like it could be maybe these 3 are the most impactful in their roles on great situations next to other 5 great players, where they're all inflated a little bit impact wise, but they all are all still great players. But these things go hand in hand. So context is super necessary to both sides, and I think that's a big point here. So why don't we pull up one of your first projects here that we were going to talk about? If I can get this to work, it's been a little janky here today, but we got how much is a 2-pointer worth? Let's see here. So we have your tweet covering it. How much is a 2-pointer worth? Looking at the average change in final margin from before to after a 2-point make in all available NBA play-by-play data. I'll pull up the full graph if you want to run through kind of what you're thinking here and what this project's about, what we're looking at here.
Yeah. This is one that came to me about 2 years ago. I, as always, was thinking about how to prove the statistician wrong. I was sitting there thinking like, man, how does how does a made 2 pointer influence the final point differential? And like, can we use that to quantify how much a 2 pointer is worth? And the answer is yes. Like, it's pretty awesome. I went through and I took every in play by play data going back to like 2000, which I think is as much as we have. Um, I went through and I measured what was the average margin of a game at, say, 1-0, right? So the game is scored 1-0. What is the average final point margin for that game? And this sort of thing has been done before in terms of like the rubber banding effect. I know that there's been a few people who have posted that type of analysis out there. But by comparing what the current margin is to the average final margin, we can then go, okay, now when this player made this basket, it went from 2-0 to 4-0. Like the margin on the court went from 2 to 4, but the expected point total went from, or expected margin, or average margin, went from something like 1.5 to like 2.5. And so really all you're doing is adding 1 point of expected value for that possession. And that's really what you're seeing here is for that first quarter, building a lead, it's valuable, but it's not necessarily going to last. It doesn't exactly build up over time. But as you get deeper and deeper into the game, it's pushing from 1 point to 1.5 to, and by the end of the game, you're actually running into scenarios where it's like if the game is separated by 1, and you score a basket, Kevin Durant hits a basket with 15 seconds left, it comes the other way. The expected margin at that point isn't 1. The expected margin at that point is like almost 3. And so really what's happening with that basket is it's going from an expected margin of -3 to an expected margin of 3. And so it's incredibly valuable that he got that point because it is affecting that final margin by that much, which I would argue is affecting thus the net rating of that team by roughly 6 points, with that single shot. And of course, that comes down to sample sizes as well. And so if you were to do an analysis with this and say like that single shot was worth 6 points, you would of course want to say or have some significant prior in on that data. But that said, yeah, if you are able to influence that margin, and I guess I should specify as well, that margin when you are up by 1, after having made a shot like that, for that average margin of victory to be 3, that's really just saying the other team misses their shot on the other side of the floor 30% of the time, and the ball comes back to you and you get 2 free throws and you win by 3. And so yeah, the free throw game plays a lot into it, but really, yes, the shots that as you get later and later into the game, there is significantly more value to putting the ball in the basket. So,
And that adds up, especially with what, the Kevin Durant's and Carmelo Anthony's will tell you about scoring
mhm.
and the value of scoring. I mean, it matches what they're telling you, but it makes a lot of sense for just the value of tough shot creation, whether it's in the playoffs or the fourth quarter of regular season games. Like, it's just harder to get good shots in
Mhm.
general. So like that, the logic adds up that there's more value, more value to any good reliable shot, whether it's a 2 or a 3, and if it's already reliable by points per possession earlier in the game, you would think it kind of expands on that effect. So you can kind of see, as you're saying, like the 4 point swing of it, the 6 point swing of it in that scenario as well. So it's super interesting. Super interesting. Was there anything to add with this second chart, or that you kind of went through both of them?
Yeah, yeah, that one. I mean, it's just an aggregated version of the other one.
Yeah.
Just saying, most shots are on average 2 points at 0 minutes, but then the other one is being very specific and saying like a shot with when you're down one with 0 minutes left is actually worth well over 2 points rather than just those 2 points. So
And generally, you're able to make this with Tableau or scrape. It looks like Tableau or scraping data somewhere NBA website or something.
yeah, pulled it from NBA API, threw it into SQL, and then I did a excuse me, did a shoot, the words evading me, just a smoothing algorithm on the data just to make it a little bit cleaner. It obviously flows a lot better on that viz. Um, but yeah, and then use Tableau to push that in and resize the squares, and yeah, use the coloring system from blue to red to indicate cold versus hot. But
Came out looking very cool on a heat map here, and let's shift over to the floaters and thoughts on floaters here, and mostly the I wrote about a similar idea in 22. The art of the floater, the trend of floaters just going up, and you had some theories on here. I don't have to read your tweet for you if you want to summarize it of what you're thinking here and what trend you were seeing.
yeah, floaters have a special spot in my heart.
Love a good floater. Love a good floater, man. Floater.
Specifically, so yeah, Jordan Clarkson really radicalized me. I When the Jazz traded for Jordan Clarkson, I made the joke on Twitter that Jordan Clarkson, when I saw Jordan Clarkson walk onto the court, I knew he was going to win a championship for us, and it wasn't quite true, but it did have the highest winning percentage I think the Jazz ever had with Jordan Clarkson, and like he played a significant part in that. He was sixth man of the year. Um, but Jordan Clarkson brings so much value, or I guess I should say brought so much value to a basketball team just in the aspect of his self creation. Um, so when it comes to floaters in specific, uh, so I say here, yeah, of the 21 highest volume seasons in unassisted mid range, short mid range shots, 20 have come since 2020. And so just an insane amount. It's been a huge boom. And the reason why is because teams are grasping the need for offensive rebounding more, or the value of the offensive rebounding. When it comes to a floater, teams rebound missed attempts offensively. I want to say like 35% of the time. Like it's a ridiculous amount. It's very similar to layups. Layups, I think it's like 45%. Versus if you're taking like threes, you're only getting like 5 to 10% of your misses. And so, of course, with someone like Jordan Clarkson coming in, he drives to the lane, he takes a floater, and then the Jazz get a rebound if he misses. And so this essentially levels the playing field for him, where being like only making 43, 45, whatever percent, that doesn't matter, because in the 55%, they're still rebounding 33% of those. And then they're scoring, 1.1 points per possession on those offensive rebounds, which effectively makes it a positive play. And then you also add in the fact that he gets fouled quite a bit on those attempts. And so he gets those and ones and then just shooting fouls. And yeah, the fact that he took such a high percentage, he was among league leaders in short mid-range attempts taken. Like it was just a pretty crazy experience. One other thought on that too. So after this season, I was like pretty convinced of this, but I really wanted to like look at some things. And so, do you have cleaning the glass access? Could you pull something?
Just the public side.
Ah, dang. Okay. Um, well, okay. So I went to DeMar DeRozan, and if you are listening, you can look up DeMar DeRozan on cleaning the glass. But so with the four factors, with on off four factors, you see a lot of players uh who have like significant impact in some area, and with a player like Jordan Clarkson or DeMar DeRozan, you'd think, oh, like they're good scorers, and so effective field goal percentage should be on off. It should be higher. Like they should be better shooting the ball, more efficient shooting the ball, whatever. When these guys are on the court, um, but with these guys, what actually happens is they turn the ball over less, and they keep the effective field goal percentage at the same. And this isn't what's happening. Isn't the fact that like DeMar DeRozan and Jordan Clarkson, whoever else, are like really, really good at protecting the ball, and like therefore every year they're in the 90th percentile of like keeping their team turnovers down. What's happening is they are taking the shots that don't force turnovers. Like teams don't care to like really try to stop that shot in the same way, especially when it comes to like assisted looks versus these guys where they're not passing the ball either. And so just by so their value ends up coming from not turning the ball over, but that's a result of their shot selection as opposed to their actual skill value. Their skill value is raising the floor of the effective field goal percentage from a negative percentage to about league average. And so that's another thing with the mid-range shot that just has always intrigued me, of like it can be deceptive in how it shows up in value. It can show like, oh, these guys are really good at not turning the ball over, but what's really happening is they're really good at taking the shots that don't turn the ball over. And they're good enough at making them that they keep the effective field goal percentage good. So
That is very interesting. I do think of DeMar as a good assist to turnover guy, and I never really would correlate it to his mid range efficiency. But that is something that's interesting there. And you already think of maybe just layups, like you said, getting the ball on the rim for offensive rebounds as a strategy. But not necessarily floaters and mid range. But it makes more sense that the short range shots, you get a much higher percentage offensive rebounds than three balls, where you're gonna have to chase those long rebounds that can go any direction, anywhere, and you got guards getting long rebounds off three balls compared to maybe teams that have size inside and dominate, crash the glass with their big man advantage. So that's an interesting part of the strategy that I don't know, that it probably gets overlooked a little bit. There's a probably be a little bigger here looking through here, but you had a few other players here: Jalen
yeah,
Brunson,
well.
D Fox, and Trey Young as
Mm-hmm.
well. Wanted to highlight Trey. I have some graphs on Trey's floaters as well, but any thoughts on him? I think of him as just kind of the floater king every year running. And what's interesting, now that you mention a lot of this, is how much you know mid-range is thought of as the best case scenario for defense. Like, defenses want you to take mid-range shots. They want you to take tough shots. If you're attacking them and drop defense, they pretty much want you to take the floater because it's one of the tougher shots.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, if you have a guy that can make a floater, and you have offensive rebounders that can crash the glass, like you said, you can really paint the odds in your favor across the board between the floater going in, the offensive rebound going your way off of the miss, and on top of just kind of that floater lob threat where sometimes you also get alley-oop passes that way, and on top of they're not defending it, so they're not blocking it or stealing it as much necessarily as you're saying there. So it's almost more efficient in that way too. So it's definitely interesting how many different ways that, like you said, that mid-range efficiency can kind of play out statistically, and that's a huge example of where the context comes in, of kind of knowing, what's the initial thing that's causing all of these effects statistically. And for some of these players, it's the floater or the mid-range game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think I think with Trae Young specifically, um, there's both the question of like, you know, he's creating a pain point for the defense to like have to want to stretch out to him just a little bit at the rim, with the like sweep defender, the rim defender. But the fact that he's, yeah, with offensive rebounding, he's able to make that into a positive value shot, above league average shot. Um, it goes from just being like a slight gravity modifier of like, oh, you have to kind of like make sure that he doesn't do that quite as much, to like, no, this is a real pain point for the defense that they have to worry about, because if they let him have it all game, they're going to lose.
Yeah, at a certain point, if the points per possession looks like a Kevin Durant mid-range pull-up, like you're just giving up layups out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you,
Mm-hmm.
you, you can't be doing that. I'll run through. I had some graphs around this time as well on highlighting some of the trend. I'll run through the art of the floater on my Substack. Just run through some of the graphs I had as well, highlighting some of it. Similar as you said, like just the volume and floaters alone. I think there's a ton of factors between just pace and shot selection in general, and the way teams play. The increase in pick and rolls, which leads to more drop coverage of pick and rolls, and which leads to more floaters out of pick and rolls. I think probably had a huge effect around like as that gains volume as well, and popularity in the league. But you can see that just for example, the total runners taken around 2010 was only 1,500, and then up to 2011 to 6,700, up to 2013 was 11,000, and up to nowadays about a few years ago was 12,000, 13,000, 14,000. If you look at the total number of different players that were taking at least 10 runners by season, it was only 18 players in 09, 50 in 2010, 188 in 2011, and then up to over 300 just a few years ago in 2023. I don't have a great explanation for this anomaly in 2015. If you're looking at the chart, I chalk it up to a data error in collection because it doesn't make a ton of sense. So sorry about that one. But the team floater landscape just kind of goes through some of the volume and efficiency by team that year. The Nuggets were really good by the team, Clippers by the team, getting a full point every time they made a floater. Only 6 per game. The Grizzlies were shooting 13 floaters per game. A lot of Ja Morant floaters at the time. Who has the best float game at that time? Jokic and Brandon Clark. This was like I said, 2022. So Jokic 1.4 points per possession on about 1.5 floaters per game. He's still a master of that float game. Trae Young up to 4 floaters per game at about 1 point per possession. Ja Morant right behind him at 4 per game in volume. Luka Doncic not far off at 3 per game, 1 point per possession, and CJ McCollum at the time also 1 point at 3 per game. So just highlighting. I think that's. Oh, I got one more here. The just the volume, just showing 5 years of floaters. Trae Young's incredible volume took 1,100 floaters in over a 5 year span, and made a point per possession on all of them, as we're saying, and like hasn't really slowed down. Like his start stop burst may have slowed down a little bit, but he's still crafty and he can still get to that floater, and it's still as mean and as efficient as ever. Jokic super efficient on those floaters, and Rashawn Holmes, Brandon Clark, everyone thinks of them as good floaters, so it makes sense that they show up here. And lastly, I can zoom out here or show these two, but just kind of highlighting all. It might be a little hard to do at once. So by volume, same graph, just kind of in a different representation, but by volume and efficiency. So I know I threw a lot of graphs at you. Did any one jump out, or any one particular thought there stand out to you on all that?
Yeah, no, I think that one of the player ones was really interesting to me. My initial thought goes to like this kind of like helps prove out exactly what I'm saying too, because like it's largely used as a counter to the lob, right? It's it's a counter to the lob, I guess.
Right.
Where someone like Nikola Jokic, he's not having a big center looming at the rim, and so he's not where he's hyper efficient. Um, that's where the value of his floater's coming from, right? He's not going to be getting that 35% offensive rebound rate. He's going to be getting something more like 10 to 15% offensive rebound rate, unless because it's Nikola Jokic, he's going to get 10 or 15 himself, and then they'll get another 10 or something. Um, but yeah, that said, I think this really, really proves out that like, yeah, it's the small guards counter to the fact that drop bigs want to stay home and don't want to have to hop out onto the offensive player. And so it becomes a weapon for these guys. It becomes a weapon for Trae Young, and people want to assume that means that it's an inefficient shot, but it's just not. As long as you have someone who can rebound the ball, it's stretching the big so that you can get an offensive rebound, or have an open shot. So
I think that's a great point, and comes down to kind of the how efficient your player is at that tough shot, and how how much of an advantage you have down low for the offensive rebounds, like you're saying, where if those are your advantages, you play to them and you create your own opportunities on the glass. I'll see if I can get this to stop sharing as we're talking here. It's been a little glitchy today, but let's sort of switch over to some Jazz talk. I just wanted to kind of hear some of your thoughts on where the Jazz are at this season, where you're feeling as a franchise as a whole these days. You feeling optimistic about, you got Markkanen on, I believe, max money. That's big deal if it's not max money either way. Looking at like 50 mil, something along those lines, or 45 mil. For a few years. What's the fans' reaction to that? Has he officially transitioned from temporary player that was gaining value under this new regime to now he's the guy in Utah, and the fans are kind of happy to have him as their guy, especially with his strong play in Finland?
yeah, I mean, so a couple thoughts. It's been interesting being a Jazz fan for the last couple years, because for the first time in a while, it kind of took a turn from the in-game analysis to more of like a structural, like, how do you build a team type of analysis, where that's a lot of the conversation going on among Jazz fans, is like, do we tank, do we not tank, how do we, like, why is Svi playing instead of Ace Bailey? And um i I tend to side with the coaches on things like that. Like, Svi is bringing a lot of value to the Jazz. Lauri's taken a big step up. Like, he is, I think he is absolutely ascended to the position of, like, this guy is he's a guy. And I don't know that he's ever going to be some self-creating all-star, and I think that's what a lot of people want out of him. But I think the value that he brings is so unique. Any contending team would want him. I would want him a couple years ago on that Jazz team with Gobert and Mitchell. I think he's the first player to ever have like 200 threes and 200 dunks in a season or something like that. Maybe it was 150 each. But he stresses the defense on both offense and he stretches the defense both from the perimeter and at the rim, in a way that not many players do. And I think the last couple years you've seen sort of a dip in his production. I think there's two reasons for that. I think one is that the best season of his career came playing alongside Mike Conley and Jared Vanderbilt, and um, getting to play alongside Mike Conley was like a transformative experience for him, and alongside Kelly Olynyk as well, where he no longer, and I think also being in a position where he was running off pin downs, diving to the rim constantly, rather than just kind of being a guy that sits in the corner and cuts occasionally. Like, he was the focal point of that offense as an off-ball player, which I think is pretty unique to the Jazz system. But yeah, the last couple years, it's been tougher because spacing has deteriorated. They don't have um, nearly as many good 3-point shooters, as well as a big center who doesn't really shoot. Although we'll see if he's 6 for 8 so far on the season, so we'll see if Walker Kessler figures that out. But yeah, the spacing has gone, and so Lauri's really had to play without much spacing. And then the other reason is that the Jazz don't really want to win right now. And so they're saying, hey, Lauri, go and take 8 shots a game from three. And like, I don't care what it is, like double pump a three and then fire it up while defend, like double teamed from 28 feet or something like that. Like there was a lot of that where, um, it was pretty frustrating, to be honest, watching the Jazz a lot during that time. But this year it's been sort of revolutionary where he has a little bit more of that to his game, but they're also like they've spread the floor now. Like Kyle Filipowski is becoming an incredible on ball, like dish down player, and so they can run a fun little action where it's like Filipowski comes off a screen and then he runs a pick and roll with Lauri, and Lauri can choose to pop or he can choose to roll, and there's just so much fun that's happening with really it's their three bigs. It's Lauri as well as Flip as well as Walker Kessler. Um, that's just not really been there up until now. So I know you had a couple videos you wanted to show, or video.
Yeah, I think this one video, and I might have to leave and come back in afterwards. I think that's how this is gonna work. But at the very least, it seems to be working. Otherwise, we'll try it one more time here. But yeah, we do have a play here. If I can get it to come up, that I think highlights some of that off-ball gravity, because that's really what I wanted to highlight of Markkanen is on top of the Finland just dominance, how great he's been over there, showing like real international stardom type of level play clearly. Is just Will Hardy's use of him just as an off-ball guy that, like you said, can stretch the defense vertically and horizontally at the rim from the perimeter. And there's not many players that have that level of 3-point gravity and vertical gravity like that, where it's like the ultimate Swiss Army knife, pick and pop, pick and roll threat, can do a little bit of everything. And he's billed as like they're running all these plays like a taller Klay Thompson you would run the offense through. But as you're saying, it's gone through a lot of variations over the years, from having Mike Conley running the show to now trying to like rebuild a rebuilding team on the fly. But there's a lot of young talent, as you're hitting on. I mean, I just wanted to know, of all the young guys, is anyone really jumping out? There's Bryce Sensabaugh, Keyonte George, Isaiah Collier. I really like Walter Clayton in the draft. He seems to be hitting some pull up threes. He's hunting his pull up and pick and rolls, and looks like the real deal as a shooter. Maybe we'll hit on Ace in a minute, but any other young guys that, or even just unsung heroes to this team that you really want to give a shout to this year so far?
Yeah. Elijah Harkless.
I'll try to pull this up, but Elijah Harkless is the other
Yeah.
clip.
Yeah. Elijah Harkless is a dog, man. He's so good. I don't think he's ever gonna be like a guy who can actually play on offense, but the energy that he brings to the team is contagious, and um, he's just everywhere on defense. I sent you a clip where he defends 3 players in one possession. he pokes the ball from behind on, I don't know, Derek White, and then defends Jaylen Brown, and then pops out to the 3 to defend Jaylen Brown's kick out. And so he it's so refreshing as a Jazz fan after having had these last couple years where it's a lot of young guys who are honestly kind of lazy on defense especially. And I don't know. I think lazy's a it's not a fair word for that. I think they're more clueless, to be honest. They really often get lost in the system and are trying to find their spot to be. And Harkless is like a breath of fresh air, where like he's hounding guys, and yeah, I mean it's just fun to watch. I That's the type of player that I want on my team, especially as the Jazz really try to get better here in the next couple of years. Uh, like that's someone that you want to get minutes to like really light a fire under the other guys. Um,
Yeah, you love a defensive dog like that that's just out there hounding every possession, like feeling him everywhere. I'll try to
mhm,
get the clips up edited in the post here because having some problems pulling up the two clips here. But one of them highlights kind of the off ball vertical gravity of Markkanen just as a three. If he gets a screen for three, but then he can roll to the rim, catching him backdoor wide open. You got to pay attention to him nonstop, and then as you said, Elijah Harkless just everywhere defensively. You can feel him just swarming, switching, screen navigating. Those are the type of guys you want. And when I think more of the 3-point shooting when I think of kind of the young guys on this team. Is
mhm,
there any? Let's shift a little to just the impact. Your thoughts of Will Hardy, his culture, the coaching style around is there something of an off-ball shooting system being built here, getting guys moving off ball? Like, does that feel like a real offense that this team can build around Lauri, Ace Bailey, Clayton, Keyonte George, all their shooters going forward? What's the impact been like for Will Hardy's culture? His culture. Does it feel like this offense is something real that the team can build on going forward? It feels like off-ball shooting sets, really stretching the floor with the gravity of Lauri Markkanen and hopefully Ace Bailey, Walter Clayton, Keyonte George has really been impressive, and potential of other guys, Sensabaugh, Collier that we've been hitting on, and the bigs. And I don't think we mentioned Taylor Hendricks as well. Give him a shout. He's been promising in sets. Any thoughts on starting with Will Hardy and that culture of the off-ball shooting? Does that feel real for this team?
yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I like the most about Will Hardy is his willingness to change. Um, I mean, just from the start, his just that first year that he was here, immediately implementing this exact offense. Really, like, I mean, it's a bit different because we're playing with three bigs as the initiators rather than just Mike Conley as the initiator. But it's the same thing: off ball movement, cutting to the rim, popping out to three, whatever. Um, it's really fun. It, the thing that I've noticed consistently with Will is when things aren't working, he's not gonna stop and do the same thing. Like he's willing to change. He's said like you can't throw a fastball all playoffs and win the championship. Like that just doesn't work. Um which I think honestly is kind of a direct allusion to the previous iteration of the Jazz where Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert it was a pick and roll followed by the blender and that was it. That's all we had. And but he's so willing to change. There was a time 2 years ago where the Jazz, as they have the last 3 or 4 years, started off the season dead last defensively. They were terrible. And within a month or two, like by December, he said like screw it, I'm gonna go for a zone defense, and the Jazz played primarily zone defense for about a month, and I want to say they went 500 over that stretch, which was just incredible. It was like, where did this come from? Uh, and it teetered off eventually, and then he went away from it, and so it's like he very much can read the room as to like what's working, what's not working, and like be willing to challenge those beliefs that he has set. He's also said like it's easier to uh you know it's so easy to like with the media do the easy thing and just like play man to man. Like nobody would be complaining about him playing man to man that December. but but once the December is passed, or like even towards just the start of that period, everyone was like, "Whoa! Like, why are they playing zone?" And like he's putting his neck out on the line to be scrutinized. And so whether or not it's coaching for a bad team where he can like experiment, he's still having to brace the headwinds of scrutiny from Twitter or wherever else. Um, I think when that comes to the players on the team specifically, and I'll see if I can run through all of them real quick. I do think the movement offense is legitimate. I think it may take some iterations to figure out exactly what that looks like with the pieces they've got. I think that it would be disappointing if he were to try to build the team into a structure rather than build around the team and what they've got. That's exactly what I'm just saying is like I don't think that he's like that. Um, Keyonte has been fantastic. Keyonte is running. He as soon as he gets the ball, he's across half court. He'll push up to a, a man cutting to the basket. He's been shooting really well. He's getting to the line a lot. Uh, I'm very encouraged by what we've seen by Keyonte George. I do think after what we've seen these first 7 games, and I think there's a lot more basketball to be played. He's proven that he's in like a starter caliber player on the offensive end, and we'll see if that continues on the defensive end or not. But he's definitely there. Kyle Filipowski, I'm very high on as well. His strength is something that like I think is underappreciated. The way he's able to consistently 2 or 3 times a game just lower his shoulder into a defender and hurl towards the rim and then get a little bit of separation and throw up a floater or a layup or whatever. Um, and then let's see, Taylor Hendricks. He's had a slow start to the season. You want to attribute it to his injury, but I'm skeptical. I wasn't really convinced from his rookie season. We only got 3 games out of him in the second season, and so he's looking a lot slower, which again I'm hoping is just because of his injury. But if he's not able to stay a step ahead of a defender or instead of an offensive player, I'm not sure what value he's really bringing because he is mostly just like a catch and shoot, stick in the corner, occasionally cut to the basket, like basically what they were trying to do with Lauri Markkanen in Chicago and Cleveland.
Right.
But I think that Taylor Hendricks actually fits that role. Isaiah Collier, I do worry that Isaiah Collier, to be honest, is just a bit of an unathletic Russell Westbrook. Like he's very aggressive with his passes, which I think ends up creating a lot of baskets and value, but also loses a lot of value because he ends up just trying something that wasn't there and throwing it to a defender or just throwing it out of bounds, or often he'll drive to the rim, jump into the air, and then throw the ball out of bounds. And so Isaiah Collier, let's see, Bryce
Not out on Collier's talent, but I hear you.
yeah.
He's an exciting player, but I hear you though. There's I really want to hear one if we could hit one last guy here, because I got to get out of here in a second. Is just initial thoughts on Ace Bailey. Comes in a little controversial. You either know about all the different ups and downs of his pre-draft stuff or not, but he ends up in Utah. And he looks good right away in summer league. The big thing for him, he comes in as a powerful athlete, like mean rebounder, can make like some of the pros. He makes highlight turnover plays and downhill dunks in transition, and shows tough shot making without many dribbles needed, and can potentially hit the catch and shoot three. And the big thing for me as a prospect, I was worried that his lack of handle would maybe limit some of the creating potential on the ball for him to be like this heliocentric scoring star at the next level. But everything else is pretty much there as like a D&3 tough shot making NBA athlete. So what are the impressions for the first few games? Obviously, it's a lot of hype that he has to live up to, and it's tough. It reminds me a little of Jabari Smith and just the conversation around him in the draft, more so than necessarily anything about their games, but a little bit of the criticisms as well. Just having this star billing, but just will you be able to create yourself everything at the NBA level with tough ball pressure underneath you is really tough for a lot of guys, especially when you're a taller ball handler. and maybe don't have the tightest handle in the world. So speed round if you could. And it's something you like a lot and maybe you're a little worried about with Ace so far.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited about Ace. His preseason was really solid. He struggled since in just to start the season. I think it's mostly a just like sickness issue, as well as just like hasn't seen the floor as much as maybe we'd like. But that said, I think what I like the most about Ace is how he's able to fit in this movement system. That's one thing that I was really worried about going into the draft is whether he'd just be a dominant on-ball guy. But he hasn't been that at all. Like he's been very like positive as a running off pin downs I think it really adds a layer to the Jazz's game that he can come off a pin down but take a long mid-range shot. Like it really changes the dynamic of the floor, especially when you have guys like Lauri Markkanen and whoever else out there. I think my one like remaining concern with Ace, um, I I don't really know that it's concern. I think I'm worried what happens when he eventually tries to be the guy, and I don't know that that will be him doing that because that's the one thing that I was worried about before the draft is that he would try to be doing that. But since the draft, I'm just worried like the Jazz are going to be like, "Hey, you're the guy, go out and do it." And I'm a little skeptical that he's going to be able to get into his own shot um without just playing within the system. I'm sure they'll keep those looks for him, but I think that'll be how they try to elevate his game and I I think that it'll eventually come around, but he's 19, so I don't think that'll happen necessarily this year.
Yeah, and maybe the Jazz get one more guy they can bill as the guy, so they could kind of share the spotlight a little bit. Because I could totally see what you mean. The expectations, top level pick, that's
Mhm.
the NBA for you. But I'm rooting for them. It's a lot of pressure on these kids that don't really have any idea what they're walking into when it comes to all the hype and all the ups and downs of the way they get talked about in coverage. And he's clearly an NBA athlete with a really mean shot, a really mean like defensive prowess instincts, and just a fun player on that end. He'll make a highlight play multiple times, probably once a game if I had to imagine for you. So
Mhm.
that's exciting for Jazz fans. I really appreciate this, Riley. It's been fun just hearing your thoughts, breaking down this analysis on the history of the floater and the floater boom as we've dubbed it here, and the value of the 2 point shot, what the Jazz are up to. It's cool to see. So we'll have to do this again, check in as the Jazz keep things rolling here. But thanks for taking the time today, Riley. It's been fun.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
With Ryan.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.